full immersion brewer, drip brewer. What's the difference? Let's find out. Hello, my name is Stephen Holm. I am with Homegrounds, and I am wearing a hat indoors because my head is cold. Today we are talking about the two main different types of coffee brewers out there. We have drip brewers and full immersion brewers. You've probably heard or seen those terms thrown around a bit and maybe not really known what the difference was or why you may choose one over the other. So the goal in today's video is to kind of dive into each one and figure out why you may brew a certain coffee with an AeroPress versus a Kalita Wave. Now let's go over what each of these types actually is. Drip brewers are any type of coffee brewers where you have water continuously being poured over a bed of coffee grounds and dripping out of the bottom of the brewer. So that would be anything like a pour-over brewer like this Kalita Wave, your automatic coffee dripper that you just have in your kitchen, anything that water is constantly flowing. Versus a full immersion brewer like this AeroPress or say a French press, where all of the coffee grounds and all of the hot water are all in contact with each other throughout the entire brew until you decide to start drawing down. In the case of the AeroPress, you start plunging. French press, you push down the plunger, you pour coffee grounds out. You get the idea. So what are some advantages or disadvantages of each? So let's start with drip brewers. Most of the advantages of a drip brewer are going to stem from the fact that you have a lot more control over these brewers. For example, you can adjust the grind size of your coffee grounds, and larger sizes will allow the water to pass through the brewer quicker, versus smaller coffee grounds will make your brew time go longer. You have a lot of variables that are all affecting one another, which leads to a few advantages in your cup of coffee. One, it's going to highlight the complexity. So if you're buying a coffee from Ethiopia, say, and you want it to taste really bright and fruity, you can adjust all those variables in order to get that in your cup. You're also going to get more clarity out of your coffee, and that's mostly due to the filter that you're using. So for example, in a French press, you're typically not using paper filters, just metal ones, and those allow a lot more sediment and really small coffee particles through, and that's going to give more of a heavier body or mouthfeel to your coffee, versus a paper filter is going to taste a lot cleaner and allow you to taste more of the nuances of flavors in your cup. And while those can usually be seen as advantages of a drip brewer, they can also be seen as disadvantages, because if you have a lot more variables that you have to stay on top of, then you have more room for error. So drip brewers are typically going to be a little more challenging, just because you have to learn how to manage all of those variables in coffee brewing in order to get the cup of coffee that you are looking for. Now on to full immersion brewers. What are some advantages of these? Well, if we go back and look at our drip brewers' disadvantages, that's sort of where you get the advantages of a full immersion brewer. They are going to be less dependent on each individual variable that you are putting into your brew. So for example, I could have a really coarse grind size, but that does not affect the overall brew time of this AeroPress. What does affect the brew time of this AeroPress is when I tell it to start plunging, or if you haven't updated your AeroPress to be voice activated yet, when you begin pressing down on the plunger. And so not only does that make it sort of less challenging having to manage all of these little variables, but also it gives you some room to play around with different recipes that you wouldn't be able to do with a drip brewer. A good example of this is the Clever Dripper. So in my video, I talked about using a really fine grind, but only allowing it to steep for a short amount of time, or possibly using a really coarse grind and allowing it to steep longer, because each of those variables is going to be independent of one another, and you can sort of play around with different levels of each to come out with a different result. Another benefit with a full immersion brewer is that you are typically going to have coffees that are more bold or strong. Those words are used a lot to describe French press coffee for a couple reasons. One being that you are using a metal filter versus paper, but also with full immersion brewing, since all of those grinds are in contact with all of the water throughout the whole process, you're going to just get a bolder, stronger, kind of more in your face cup than you would with a drip brewer. And lastly, full immersion brewing is going to be a little bit easier for someone just getting into manually brewing coffee. If you don't want to have to worry about so many different variables in coffee brewing, you just want to buy something to brew a single cup at a time, I highly recommend checking out an AeroPress, a French press, any of the full immersion brewers. Now, why would you not want to use a full immersion brewer? Well, if you're looking for a cup of coffee that's really complex and clear with its flavors, and you want to be able to adjust all of those variables in your brewing, then that's not really the brewer for you. Another reason could be that typically full immersion brewers use metal filters, and that lends to a much heavier body or mouthfeel in your cup of coffee, which some people are not really into. And lastly, I won't get into this a whole lot because it's kind of confusing to understand, but full immersion brewers are less efficient than drip brewers, meaning that in order to get the same strength of coffee out, you need to use more coffee grounds in a full immersion brewer than a drip. That concept is really hard to explain, but Barista Hustle, an online coffee resource, does a great job explaining it. I will link that video in the description below. If you want to geek out about it, I highly recommend checking that out. So in conclusion, why would you choose a drip brewer over a full immersion brewer or vice versa? Well, it kind of just depends on what you're looking to get out of your cup of coffee and maybe how much effort you want to put into your cup. If you are looking for a cup of coffee that's really clean, really brings out the nuances of the coffee's origin and the roasting profile, you want to look for a drip brewer. If you're someone new into manual coffee brewing, or you want something that's a little more bold, strong, maybe you like a heavier mouthfeel, then full immersion brewers are going to be great for you. I hope that this sort of small introduction was helpful between the two types of brewers. If you have more questions, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, happy brewing. So an AeroPress and a Kalita Wave walk into a bar. One says, "I'm better than you." Who said it? We'll find out. Knock, knock. Who's there? Full immersion or drip brewer? Full immersion or drip brewer who? Let's talk about it.